All right, so I am Kevin with FlashVote. Who's heard of FlashVote? A few people. But you all deal with public input, right? All right, so real quick, how often do you think the majority of your public input sentiment matches the whole community sentiment? Never. Who's got a guess? We got never over here. Anyone taking more than never? Okay, and throw out another number just in case. 10%. Okay, who's over 10%? Show of hands. We know they work. All right, some hands. Who's under 10%? Okay, slight majority, 3-2. Everyone else, the arms aren't working anymore. Who's not sure? Who doesn't know? Everyone else, right? Okay. So what's interesting about that, how often is public sentiment the same as what the real public thinks? We've actually looked at that. We looked at our first 300 surveys and compared the scientific data to what you were seeing, hearing, thinking. 5% of the time. So 10% was a really good guess. So was never, actually. It's a pretty good guess. Very close, within statistical error. The other interesting thing is that that's the time that it matches the direction and the side. About 25% of the time it exaggerates a small position. About 70% of the time we see it's the opposite. So what you're hearing is the opposite of what the whole community wants. Well, that's interesting. So you guys had a pretty good sense of that. What about your elected officials? Who think they think a majority of public input sentiment matches the whole community? Well, I see a lot of pained faces. A little more than you guys do? Laughing, painful, wincing. Okay. Yeah, a lot more, it turns out. There's a guy who does great social media law talks. You might want to have it at a future conference. This is how he explains it to elected officials. If you think social media is a good representation of the public, you are too drunk to drive. So it turns out that we have also surveyed governments, and what percent of local governments have had decisions influenced by a few noisy people, right? The public input sentiment. 97%. That's almost the same as everyone. And we're all smiling and going, oh yeah, that's happened where we live, aren't we? Okay. So that's most of the picture, but there's one last piece of the picture, your residents. So does the public want you making decisions based on the public input sentiment, based on the noisy few? What do you think? A lot of heads shaking, right? Whole community sentiment, that's kind of what we're being paid to do. That's why we become public servants. That's why I took on a public servant job 8 years ago, because I'm a masochist and a moron. So, yeah, exactly, clapping for that. We must have met. Yeah, it's perfect. So, in 1972, think about this from the resident perspective. In the US South, we know your arms work. What percent of whites do you think favored segregation? All right, I'm going to call them out. 0 to 20%. All right, no, one hand, okay? 21 to 40%. A few more. 41 to 60%. A few more. 61 to 80%. Okay, a bunch more. And then 81 to 100%. Okay, even some more, right? So, what percent of whites favored segregation was that first question? Think about this. What percent of whites believe the majority of whites in the area favored segregation? So this is the resident perspective. Interesting, right? 15% in 1972. Really within 5 years of a lot of the civil rights activity. Isn't that crazy? But 72% of the residents believe that a majority of whites favored segregation. Think about that disconnect. They saw it in the news. They saw the noisy few doing terrible things, protesting, burning crosses, right? That gap is a really important gap to close. And you can do that if the residents also see what the whole community thinks. And that's why we make our results transparent, so that everyone knows what's going on. And they love you for that more than anything else. Okay, so does the public want you making decisions based on public input sentiment? No, exactly. So, what's really going on here with this whole weird picture that we're all stuck in, right? Here's your community. This is a bell curve. We may remember it. We may twitch and wince at that picture. Who do you think you hear from in your community when there's a topic, when there's a meeting, when there's an online forum, when there's social media, when there's stuff going on? Who shows up? Anyone got a guess? The hate ones. Sometimes the self-interested people on the other side too, right? Okay, so that's right. That's who you usually hear from. They're just the most motivated. They follow the issue, they're on it, they share it with their friends. What's that feel like? when this guy shows up. Maybe with his friends. Charming gentleman. Anyone recognize him from your meetings? How about this lovely couple, perhaps? Yeah? They're your biggest supporters, really. They're just hard to get to know. They're caring loudly for all the Park and Rec fans out there. So this is the immediate reaction, right? I mean, I've been yelled at by, hey, 10 out of 11 people here think this is a terrible idea. Whoa, okay. That's what it feels like. Doesn't matter, we're human, right? We feel the hate. We react to it emotionally. It's hard, especially elected officials. But it could be this. Couldn't it? It could be that it's not the tip of the iceberg, it's just outliers who happen to be noisy. It's just that it always feels like this. That's the only slice of the universe you have without other data, right? I mean, wouldn't you be a little crazy to assume it's the opposite? Even if you kind of suspect it might be? So the missing piece, of course, is somehow getting a sample from the middle. A lot of words for it: representative sample, scientific sample, statistically valid, but a true representation of what the whole community thinks. And to give you a few examples of that, there's a city in California, I'll show you a real survey result. They were getting nothing but complaints about their parks. 100%, they'd cut back on their budget. This is what it felt like. This is the actual data when we did a survey. So they were hearing from 0.3% of their community, and it felt like everybody. Staff morale was crushed. They got the data. The next day, it was back where it needed to be. Professionals proud of their work. Here's another one, sex ed. So this is one where there's two sides, and we can probably think of other things where the loud sides, pro-mask, anti-mask, right? A lot of the issues going on right now. So this is the actual SurveyMonkey data that they got when they did a survey. They got the haters, strongly disagree, and they got the people who love it, which maybe is a little uncomfortable to love the sex ed curriculum that much, but strongly agree. Okay, it's fine. Pretty much the opposite of a bell curve. Call it a barbell distribution. Basically, it's a clue you're not getting the voices from the many. And in fact, when we did a survey, it turned out there was 90% support, really consistent the whole way. Wouldn't that have been a lot easier for the people to use for data, for decisions? So at the end of the day, I just want to let you know we're here because we feel your pain. We have heard stories, secrets, examples, we collect them, and we help you overcome that with data. So what is the trick? Well, we figured out how to do short, automated, scientific community surveys. 90% faster, 48 hours instead of months. 90% cheaper, you get a whole year of surveys for less than the cost of one traditional scientific survey. And 100% easier, what's that mean? Well, we do all the work still. Write the questions, do all the communications, build the panel, everything you need to get the data. All you do is go, hey, I have a question. I wonder what people think about this. We can take it from there. You'll have data that week. The other neat part of this is because of the technique we use, which is based on what Gallup and Pew have switched to in recent years, we actually can get better data on these hot topics than even traditional scientific surveys because we're eliminating the self-selection problem that's out there. And so here's an example of a live survey page, everything broken down. And you get to see all of the different choices built in. That's pretty much it. So 2 takeaways. We get you the data you need for great decisions. We do all the work for you, and we're actually fun to work with too. Thanks very much. Come by the booth, say hi. Love to meet more of you.